My name is Diana, and at 37 years old, I had spent the entire afternoon preparing her favorite meal: poached salmon with lemon butter sauce, roasted carrots glazed in honey, and a homemade peach tart that filled the kitchen with that sweet, warm scent she always claimed reminded her of simpler times. I even laid out the old floral linen, the one she used to scold me for keeping because of its frayed edges, yet I knew she secretly loved. It was Vera's 64th birthday, and as I stood back, surveying the table set for 6, I told myself this year might be different. Not necessarily happier, but maybe, just maybe, quieter. Vera was seated at the head of the table, naturally. To her right sat June, her bridge partner and self-proclaimed truth-teller, and on her left, our cousin Lori, who had a talent for pretending not to notice tension. Across from them were 2 of Vera's longtime neighbors, women who'd known me since my awkward teenage years and still spoke to me as though I hadn't grown up. I smiled, poured the wine, passed dishes, and exchanged polite laughter. For a fleeting moment, it was almost easy to pretend this was what love looked like. Practiced warmth, well-mannered conversation, and carefully balanced expectations. Then Vera raised her glass, her manicured fingers glinting under the light. "To aging gracefully," she said with that sly little smirk she wore like perfume. "And to finally having a life free of baggage." She swirled her wine slowly, then locked eyes with me. "Honestly, Diana, the best gift you could give me this year would be to leave my life." The words landed like a slap in the middle of the table. No one moved. June coughed softly into her napkin. Lori's fork froze halfway to her mouth. The neighbors stared down at their plates. I just blinked. Once. Twice. The sound of my own pulse filled the silence. I didn't ask what she meant. There was no point. Vera never said anything by accident. If you've ever been betrayed by the very people you thought were your safety net, you might understand that numb, weightless feeling, the kind that starts in your chest and spreads outward until you can't even tell where the hurt is anymore. I stood up slowly, my smile tight and mechanical. "Excuse me," I murmured, though I wasn't sure to whom. I walked into the kitchen, rinsed my trembling hands under the cool water until they tingled and numbed, then took my coat from the hook. Without another word, I slipped it on and left. That night, I sat alone in my own dim kitchen. The tart sat untouched on the counter, the crust golden and perfect, waiting for a celebration that never came. Empty glasses crowded the sink, half-rinsed and smeared with traces of red wine. I looked at the chair where she'd sat earlier, straight-backed and smug, and wondered how long she had been rehearsing that line. Maybe weeks, maybe years, or maybe cruelty came naturally to her, fluent, instinctive. I thought of every birthday before this one, the ones where I stayed up past midnight sewing her gifts as a child, decorating her porch with candles as an adult, pretending each year would be the one she finally softened. I had spent decades trying to earn something she never intended to give. Approval. Eventually, I stood, covered the tart, and placed it in the fridge. I didn't touch the dishes. I didn't undress. I went to bed with her words echoing against the walls of my skull and the taste of quiet humiliation heavy on my tongue. When morning came, I opened my journal to a clean page. It stared back at me accusingly blank. I held my pen above it, but my hand didn't move. For a long time I just sat there, not thinking, not feeling, just existing. And then, as if some unseen thread had pulled them loose, the memories began to pour in uninvited. I was 26 when I dropped out of grad school. Vera had slipped on her porch steps and fractured her hip. She called me that night, her voice trembling just enough to sound fragile. "You're all I have," she'd said. And that was it. Those 4 words dismantled years of work. I told my professors I wouldn't be finishing the semester. "Just take a leave," one of them had suggested gently. I nodded, pretending it was temporary. But I never went back. I moved home within the week. It was supposed to be for a few months, just until she recovered. But months blurred into years into a pattern that became indistinguishable from permanence. I balanced her doctor's appointments, picked up her prescriptions, grocery shopped, managed the bills. I took a job at the library because the hours were flexible and the commute short. I dated a few people, never seriously. Whenever someone asked what my future looked like, I smiled and changed the subject. When Vera decided to refresh the house, I agreed. She painted over the buttery yellow hallway I'd loved since childhood, replacing it with a shade of sterile gray. "It's more modern," she said. I let her replace the kitchen tiles too, and even throw out the armchair I'd bought with my first paycheck. She called it tacky. I laughed, pretending to agree. "That became our rhythm," she asked, and I adjusted. But this morning, the one after her birthday, something felt different. For the first time, I could see the pattern for what it truly was. Not devotion, erasure, a slow, deliberate disappearance, strand by strand, until I couldn't tell where she ended and I began. I lowered my pen and wrote a single line. I gave up so much trying not to make her feel alone, but I never asked if I was allowed to want more than surviving her. The ink bled slightly, spreading like a bruise. I tore the page out carefully, folded it, and tucked it into the back of my journal. Then I went to the filing cabinet and began pulling out old folders, bank statements, insurance papers, the will I'd signed years ago without really reading it. That afternoon, I called the bank and made an appointment to remove her as an authorized user. I looked up local legal aid offices and found a small firm 2 towns over. The lawyer's name was Thomas Reyes. The name sounded solid, grounded. The kind of person who didn't waste words. I told no one. Not Lori. Not our neighbors, certainly not Vera. This wasn't about vengeance. It wasn't even anger. It was clarity. That evening, I stood in the hallway, scanning the house not with sentiment, but with precision. What had been hers? What had been mine? What had she quietly claimed over the years as ours, until it no longer belonged to me? My eyes fell on the old maple desk near the window, the one my father had used before he died. I opened its drawer and found the small envelope where he used to keep emergency cash, empty. The next day, I met with Thomas. He listened carefully, his calm presence steadying the shaking that had lived in my hands for years. By the time I signed the first document, I felt something I hadn't in a long while. Ownership. When I got home, Vera was in the kitchen doing her crossword. She looked up as I hung up my coat, her eyes narrowing. "Where have you been?" she asked, too casually. "Out," I replied, my voice level, and for the first time in years I didn't feel the need to explain myself. "You've been distant lately and secretive." "I don't like it." I said nothing. I went upstairs. That night the storm came, not from the sky, but through the phone. It started with a voicemail from Cousin Rachel. "What's going on over there?" "Your mom called. Said you're freezing her out." "That's cruel, Diana." Then came the texts from old neighbors, the passive-aggressive ones just checking in, heard some worrying things. And then Lori, who didn't bother sugarcoating it. "I can't believe you do this to her after everything she's done for you." I turned my phone face down and let it buzz itself into silence. Downstairs, doors slammed harder than they needed to. Cabinet drawers opened and shut with sharp intent. Vera moved through the house with heavy footsteps as if sound alone could carry her blame up the stairs. I stayed in my room and wrote it all down. I am not punishing her. I am reclaiming what is mine. The next morning, Vera banged on my door. "You've made your point," she snapped. "Now undo it." I opened the door just enough to speak. "It's not a game, Vera. There's nothing to undo." She stared at me incredulous. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but at least this regret will be mine." I shut the door and locked it. 2 days later, a notice was delivered to the house official, notarized and irreversible. By the end of the week, Vera was gone. She didn't say goodbye. I heard her dragging luggage across the hardwood floor just after dawn. Her voice, sharp and muttering, carried through the walls as she called someone to pick her up. A car idled out front for 10 minutes. Then the door slammed and I heard nothing else. I waited an hour before coming downstairs. The living room was still. A few picture frames were missing, some drawers left open, but the bones of the house had stayed. My house, my name on the deed, now uncontested. The quiet pressed in, but this time it didn't feel like accusation. It felt like breath, like space. I started slowly, the painting of the wild flowers I'd tucked away 5 years ago. I hung it back above the fireplace. I changed the bulbs in the hallway to warm light. I brought my grandmother's quilt down from the attic and spread it over the couch, the blue and green stitching still soft under my palms. I opened every window in the house, let the air move through each room until it carried her scent away. Later that evening, I found an old tea tin at the back of the cupboard, the one I used to keep tucked in my nightstand drawer before Vera declared it clutter. I brewed a cup and drank it on the back porch legs tucked under me, the sun slipping behind the trees. I thought I might cry, but I didn't. Not then. Instead, I sat with a calm so quiet, I almost didn't recognize it. Not relief, not victory, something else. Something like return. That night, I slept with the bedroom door open. The next morning, I registered for an art class at the community center. The room smelled faintly of pencil shavings and turpentine warm, lived in without expectation. No one asked me why I was there. No one asked my last name. I found a seat near the back, opened my sketchbook, and waited. The instructor, a woman named Kali, with silver-streaked curls and paint on her sleeves, welcomed everyone without fanfare. "We're not here to be good," she said. "We're here to beg in." I hadn't drawn since I was 22, not really. Not since I left school. And tucked that part of myself away like a luxury I couldn't afford. The first few lines were hesitant, my hands stiff and unfamiliar with movement that once felt instinctive. But by the second class, something shifted. I wasn't drawing Toby scene. I was drawing because it felt like breathing again. No one in the room knew about Vera. No one knew about the bank accounts or the slammed doors or the birthday toast that had cracked something open. They only knew the way I shaded light, the way I smudged with the side of my thumb, the way I laughed softly surprised when someone told a joke under their breath. It was enough. Each week, I came home with charcoal under my nails and a sense of stillness. I didn't try to explain. I began rearranging the house one corner at a time. I painted the guest bathroom a pale sage. I moved the reading lamp to the other side of the couch. I filled frames with my own sketches. Quiet portraits of hands, trees, and once a single daisy. One afternoon, I found myself humming while cooking. It startled me. I hadn't made noise just to fill space in years. That evening, I sat by the window with my journal and wrote one sentence. I'm not building a new life. I'm remembering the one I left behind. And then the phone rang. It was her voice, hollowed out but unmistakable. "Diana," she said barely above a whisper. "It's me." I didn't say anything. The phone sat warm in my hand, balanced between memory and instinct. "I'm not well," she continued. "The doctors found something, and I thought you should know." I let the silence stretch. She sighed. "The kids ask about you. They miss you. We all do." It was the word with it struck hardest. I could picture her saying it, her hand on her chest, like it justified everything that came before. "I'm sorry," she added softer now. "I said things I didn't mean, but this house doesn't feel right without you. None of it does." I looked out the window where the daisy sketch now hung in the corner of the glass. The light hit it differently every hour. It had become a kind of clock for me, marking time by how it changed. "I'm glad the kids are well," I said, "and I hope you're getting the care you need." She paused. "So can we talk? Maybe come by just to see you." I closed my eyes. "I can't go back to being small so you can feel big," I said quietly. She exhaled sharply, wounded or angry. I couldn't tell which. "So that's it." "That's it." She hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just sat there breathing. The quiet didn't feel like punishment anymore. The next morning, I stepped out into the garden with a trial in one hand and a packet of seeds in the other. The soil was dry but soft, the kind that welcomed change. I pressed the lavender seedlings into the earth, gently spacing them with care, then followed with sage along the back edge of the fence. I didn't rush. Each handful of dirt felt like a promise. When I stood to stretch my back, the sun was low and warm across the porch. A breeze moved through the branches, and for the first time in years, I could hear the world without a filter of tension. I stayed out there until the light shifted to gold. Then came the knock. 2 girls stood at my front steps, maybe 7 or 8, their faces open and curious. One held a basket lined with a kitchen towel. "Hi," the taller one said. "These are from my mom." The younger nudged her and added, "She says your garden makes her feel brave." I blinked, caught off guard. "Well, that's very kind," I said, crouching to their level. "Tell her I said thank you." They smiled and ran off before I could say more, their laughter trailing behind them like ribbon. I carried the basket inside and set it on the kitchen table. Still warm, the muffin smelled like cinnamon and apple. I didn't eat one right away. I just stood there, letting the quiet stretch wide around me. Later, I lit a candle in the living room and opened my journal. I thought disappearing would break me, I wrote, but maybe I was never meant to be seen by them. Maybe I was meant to see myself. The candle flickered, casting a soft halo of light over the pages, and then I turned to a fresh sheet and began to write.